How about that for a performance by Sean O'Malley? Indeed, it has been a slow and drawn-out rise, one that has seen him make only the most incremental steps with each opponent selected. But as O'Malley strives to get the pay he feels he deserves before attempting a surge at the belt, we are definitely seeing his game blossom. And I know, Raulian Paiva was up against it from day one with that stylistic matchup. And though I believe him to be a very good fighter in his own right, his inability to get anything off during the 5 or so minutes this matchup lasted has led many people to call for Suga Sean to get a more difficult stylistic threat in front of him next time around. And I also want to see that, believe me. But for what it's worth, any fighter who can look this good against a top 20 bantamweight deserves to be given credit, in spite of the frustration with the speed of his divisional progress. Because yeah, he's clearly doing things in the striking game that makes him a very interesting threat to the upper tier. His feints, his footwork, his ability to navigate range, the diversity of his shots. Sean O'Malley has a lot of weapons at his disposal, and as far as his fighting style is concerned, I do see a lot more positives than negatives so far. The question of how he will deal with a strong and durable wrestler is obviously the big one. And while it's easy to fall back on calling his grappling poor because he hasn't really shown it enough to suggest that it's good, I'd prefer to wait and see because, thankfully, O'Malley, who is now ranked the number 13 bantamweight in the world, will likely get a bigger test next time around. Now that's not to say that the UFC will throw him in there with a wrestler just yet, but we're definitely getting closer. He's now 7-1 in the UFC and has finished his last 5 wins by TKO or KO. And through the injury setbacks and the USADA violation and the loss to Marlon Vera, it really has drawn his saga out. But it's actually clear that O'Malley, when he's fit and eligible to fight, has been pretty active, fighting 3 times in the space of 6 months in 2020, and then 3 times in the space of 9 months this year. I think there is something to be said for him possibly being injury prone, especially with those legs, but only time will tell. For now and for this video, I kinda want to take a look at some of his fellow bantamweight contenders, in and around his position and whether they would make a good matchup moving forward. To keep it simple, I'll take number 7 down to 15. Okay, so Dominic Cruz. Initially, I had kinda liked this fight. Both guys are creative strikers and they had shared words in the past. But after seeing Cruz's excellent comeback win over Pedro Munoz, a performance that saw him forced to dig deep and make some mid-fight adjustments, I do think that at this point in his career, like Jose Aldo ahead of him, I would rather see Cruz given the opportunity to move upwards than just play the gatekeeper to a rising talent. Let's give this legendary former champion the chance to make a run at the top 5 and see how it plays out. He's earned that much at this point. At number 8, obviously the Marlon Chito Vera fight is still there, and to be honest, I don't hate this matchup. There's clearly still tension between them and maybe some unresolved competitive energy depending on how you viewed that first one. And with his most recent victory over Frankie Edgar, Chito's stock is most certainly in a good place. So yeah, I definitely don't hate it as far as my picks are concerned. Marlon Moraes, who is ranked 9th, needs a bit of a break from fighting killers who can crack his chin, but then again, it's not a terrible pick. I just wouldn't be pushing for it if I were a fan of either O'Malley or the former World Series of Fighting champion. On a quick side note, if you're enjoying this content and would like to stay up to date with all of our weekly uploads, be sure to subscribe to the channel before leaving a like and a comment to keep YouTube's algorithms fully aware of the fact that we are fast growing our own multicolored afro, bringing by far and away the single greatest statement of a haircut to the world of MMA YouTube. Also, we recently set up a Patreon account, so if you want to help support the channel, the option is now there to subscribe and unlock some exclusive content and opportunities to engage. Pedro Munoz, like Moraes, could use a rest from being the B-side, but definitely to a lesser extent than the man who is ranked 1 space ahead of him. Munoz actually isn't a bad shout, to be honest. He's clearly established himself as something of a gatekeeper, but let's not forget that he also very clearly has the skills to punish you if you're not prepared. And on top of that, his leg kicks would be an interesting weapon to bring in there against O'Malley. I don't want to see Sean O'Malley fight Frankie Edgar. Yeah, on paper he has the wrestling, but let's not try to test the longevity of this former champion by pairing him up with yet another modern, highly dynamic striker. I'd rather not risk it. In contrast, Rafael Assunção is actually a very strong candidate in my eyes, maybe the best pick so far. He's got the experience, he's well-rounded, and he's been in there with some of the best bantamweights of the era. I like the Assunção fight. Sure, he hasn't been overly active in the last few years, but his 3-fight streak of losses weren't really that brutal, except for the Garbrandt one of course. Prior to that, he was on a 4-fight run of form that saw him beat Marlon Moraes, Rob Font, and Aljamain Sterling, which is pretty damn impressive. Yeah, so the Asuncao fight is definitely a favorite for me. At 14, I'd rather not see O'Malley take on Song Yadong. Both are prospects, both are quite young, and for the sake of the continuing growth of this amazing division, let's just wait until they're higher up before spoiling this one. And finally, Cody Stamen, someone who does have the wrestling chops to serve as an interesting matchup for Suga Sean. Not a bad shout by any means, but also not the best pick. I would put Stamen somewhere in the middle. So yeah, for me, I like the idea of Sean O'Malley taking on either Rafael Asuncao, Marlon Vera if you really want to push him, or Cody Stamen. Although that would certainly be another move that would be seen as slow in terms of O'Malley's ascent. I'll put Asuncao up as my number 1 pick. No matter which way it goes though, it is clear that we are entering a truly interesting portion of this hugely promising prospect's rise. He might not have made fans out of all of you, but to deny his fighting talent would be outrageous. So let's just see how the UFC choose to play this one out early next year. But what did you make of this latest dominant effort from Sean O'Malley? And of course, who would you like to see him in there with next? Do let us know your opinions in the comment section below. We always love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Patreon link is in the description. Thank you for watching.